If you've ever been in a room with several guys, no one's talking about like what they had to do with their kids today. Like they're talking about sports, they're talking about cars, they're talking about women, they're talking about politics. Like we talk about everything but fatherhood if you give us time, right? Until you get in a room that's about fatherhood, and then everybody has all these things to share.
Welcome to Fatherhood Voices, breaking the toxic cycle. Dive in as real dads bear all, the mess ups, makeups, and every heartfelt moment in between. It's raw, it's real, and it might just change the way you see family.
Welcome to another edition of Fatherhood Voices. And I'm excited today because we have on a guest that is also on the same journey as I am. And I have Rod Richards. So, welcome, Rod.
Hey, thank you.
And he has a platform called Forfeit Fatherhood. And he's been able to not only start to showcase his journey of fatherhood, but also how fitness intertwines in it. And I'm excited to hear about that journey because fitness, as I got older in life, fitness wasn't as important to me and didn't realize that getting back into my routine of fitness and hiring a coach, a fitness trainer, it saved my life just 10 months ago when I got kind of riptide. So curious to see just how this all intertwined. And then I'm just gonna start off before you introduce yourself is I seen a post you posted. It's been a couple times, but just in the last 19 hours, where you shared that one of the greatest jobs in life is to be a father. And I'm 51 years old now, and unfortunately, I didn't heed that power of stepping to my fatherhood till just the last couple of years. And now my children are adults. And so I'm having to go back and learn how to be a father that's present, a father that provides a home that's emotionally safe. So with all that, Rod, welcome to Fatherhood Voices.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited for the conversation, and I'm fatherhood is my purpose, so I'm always down to talk fatherhood.
Nice. So who is Rod? What's your story? Where are you from? And what did childhood look like for you?
Yeah, so I'm Rod Richard the second. Actually, I'm named after my father. We don't have a middle name; it's just two first names. But born in Oakland, California, raised in Richmond, California, which is just a little bit northeast of Oakland, or sorry, northwest of Oakland. Um, so I'm a Bay Area guy. All the Bay Area teams are my teams, but I am the only son of, or only child, I would say, of Denise and Roderick. My father has two other daughters that were or they're stepdaughters, but they've been in my life since I was, I don't know, 7 or 8. So they're my sisters. So I'm the only boy. um, After my mom and dad split up when I was about 5, my mother also remarried, and the man that she married my stepdad also had 2 daughters. So I am, the lone brother of 4 sisters, but I was the only child in my household, so it was cool. I didn't have to deal with a bunch of girl stuff all the time, just sometimes when I went on visits. Um, so I mean, I think that is probably, I'm sure we're probably gonna get into that, but I think that part of it, the being the only son, having 2 fathers, definitely helped shape me into who I am as a father today based on my experience with those 2 dads.
Now, do you remember? So you're 5 years old, your parents go through a divorce. Do
Mhm.
you recall that moment, that experience, or were you too small to process it?
No, it's funny. There's certain parts of it that I remember and certain parts that I don't, right? Like my father, at that time, drugs had kinda hit the Bay Area pretty hard right around that time. So I was born in '83. So this was like 87, '88 when they started to kinda get on the rocks. So my dad, struggled with a substance abuse problem, which ultimately led to them splitting up. Um, and so I remember some of the stuff that was happening, right? I remember them arguing a lot. I remember some days where my dad was gone and we didn't know where he was, and then he would come back. I remember, my mom telling me that they were getting divorced. I remember my dad telling me that that wasn't happening. And then I remember he was gone, right? And it was just me and my mom in the house, and my dad was gone. He had actually gone to rehab at that time. Um, but I didn't really understand what divorce was. As a 5-year-old, I just knew my parents were, they didn't like each other, and so they were going to live apart. And that's as much as I understood of it. And obviously, as I got older, I understood a bit more. But that is what I remember of it. You know what I mean? I remember just there was some times where, they weren't doing good, and I didn't know why, but I just knew that they weren't going to be together.
Did you hold any no, when did the stepfather come into your life? Like, how many years after?
Oh, not too long, really, honestly. Probably 2 years after. So, like I said, they probably split up when had just turned 5. And then she remarried by the time I was 7,
Okay, and
7 or 8. Yeah.
7, 8, okay. And then were there times as you were growing up that you had resentment towards your mom because of the breakup and just, you know, your dad's, struggling to kind of figure his things out. And then now you have a new man that steps in and I'm not sure if you embraced him as a father right away or if there was a struggle. What did that look like? So remember your dad, now he's gone. You remember the toxicity, but now a new man comes in 2 hours later. How did you
hmm
receive that as a 7-year-old? And what did that look
It's really funny is I didn't, and I don't now, but I don't remember then ever holding any resentment towards anybody involved. I didn't, I wasn't angry at my dad. I wasn't upset with my mom. I didn't like, guard myself against my stepfather. I was just kind of like going with the flow, right? I didn't understand what was happening, but I trusted the people who said they cared about me and loved me. And I just assumed that this was going to be the best way to handle things. Um, I do I do now, and there was a point of time in my life where, and I got older, where I did resent my dad, but not like for any period of time. I just remember having the feeling one time we were having a conversation about because I played baseball and football, and then I ended up quitting baseball to focus on football, and he was really, really upset about it. And I felt like I was making a business decision. I was much better at football than I was at baseball. He obviously understood the financial ramifications of the 2, and he was like, "You should keep playing baseball." But, but I was like, "No, I know what I'm good at." And then in my mind, when we had this conversation, because it ended up being this is the only time I've ever raised my voice at my dad, for fear. Uh, but I raised my voice, and I remember thinking to myself, as I said, I know what I'm good at. I remember thinking to myself, and you would too if you were there. And that's the only time I ever felt that way. And it was just like a fleeting thing. But I remember very clearly having that thought. But that was the only time I really resented anybody involved, because I just didn't understand what was going on. And so I was just kind of, like I said, just riding the wave and going along with it, whatever was happening.
Well, I talk to a lot of people that have a lot of resentment towards their dads because of, the drugs and alcohol. And
hmm
a lot of times the their child takes on this role as, well, don't you love me enough to stop?
hmm
Ever come into your mind where or did you just kind of take it as, hey, that's your journey, not your journey? Or did you ever feel like, why wasn't your love strong enough to stop, to
Yeah.
keep family intact?
No, you know what? I didn't, because I think I was young enough to where I didn't really understand what it was that was happening. Um, I just like when we got to go visit him at rehab or whatever. I didn't think about it that way. I just wanted him to be better. You know what I mean? And the same thing with my mom when she remarried my stepdad. I wasn't upset like she was replacing my dad. I just wanted her to be happy. And so, I even remember asking her, "Does he make you happy?"
Mm.
And cool, I'm cool with it. Um, so no, I didn't feel, and I guess it's kind of weird because I hear the same thing too when I talk to guys who've been through the similar. Because we talk about we have similarities, and I know guys who've been through the same thing where their dads struggle. We don't have similar feelings, because for whatever reason at that age, I was just like, okay, I mean, he's struggling, but I just want him to be okay, whatever that means. Like I don't feel like it's personal. Um, and like I said, I was probably too young to really understand what was happening. You know what I mean? Like I didn't get it. I just knew he wasn't going to be there, and I knew, and my mom told me why, but again, it didn't really make sense to me. It was just like, okay, well, I guess he's not going to be here then.
Do you think that your mom preparing you, even though you were so small, you're 5 years old, do you think her being honest and transparent, it helped to ease the transition? Because this is where a lot of couples are struggling that are dealing with this exact situation, which is unfortunately so common.
Yeah. I think it's helpful. I think you have to have, I guess, kind of like more of the soft skills to be able to present it properly. But I think every parent to some degree knows their child and how they can kind of bring that across. I think we a lot of times we try to protect our children
Mhm.
from reality, but eventually it comes back to haunt us, right? Like we tell them some version of the story that doesn't make sense, and most kids are perceptive. Like they figure it out. They start to understand what's happening, and eventually you kind of get found out for not lying, but hiding the truth. So I think for me, I think that was helpful, that she kind of was a little bit honest about it. But I do think, and this is just the way my mom is she's brutally honest about everything, and she just would give it to you straight. And so sometimes that doesn't work. I just was used to her being that way, and so it was fine that she was honest about it. You know?
No, I love that. There's a powerful message there about, one, parents understanding their children and how to navigate through this. But in the end, honesty is going to be the best medicine because eventually it's going to get exposed. So,
Yeah.
so now she gets remarried, new man comes into the house, you're 7 years old. When did you open yourself up to, okay, this is my dad, or was that a process?
That uh, I don't. It was a process, but it was also kind of forced on me. Um, and not like I was resisting it, but it was just like, this is what's happening, right? We we lived in a nicer area of our city, or actually kind of like close to the outskirts of the city. We lived on a hill in a nice, 2-story house. That's where I had been living my whole youth. And then when she married my stepfather, we moved into, for lack of a better word, the hood, like as far away from the hill as you can get. So we were we were deep South Richmond, and so that was a shock for me, to go from we could go play outside and ride bikes all day until till the street lights came on, to you got to stay in the house because they're outside doing this or doing that. But when I say it was kind of forced on me, when my mom was getting married to my stepfather, we're at the wedding, and afterwards she goes, "This is your dad now." And I didn't take it like that, like I would take it now as an adult. This is your dad now. But it was just like, okay, all right, cool. And she's like, "Yeah, so you got to call him dad or daddy at that time because he's 7 years old. You call everybody, you call your dad daddy. You don't call him dad yet." So this is, you call him daddy. Cause up until that point, I had been calling him by his first name. I've been calling him Marvin because that's how she introduced him. It's just Marvin. And at one point I had to call him by his last name at the very beginning. It was like, back in the day when you had to call your teacher by her last name. So it was Mr. Holmes. And then it was like, you can call him Marvin. And then now he's your daddy. I probably, because of those transitions, it was just like, oh, okay, this is another name I'm going to call him. And he was there, and we moved in with him. We left the house we lived in and we moved into this other house that was significantly smaller and much more dangerous. And again, I was just kind of going with the flow. Like I trusted my mom, and I was kind of one of those kids who I had believed what she said in terms of like, you don't question what I'm doing. Everything I'm doing is for you. Like I'm doing whatever I'm doing to take care of you. And I was like, okay, I trust you.
And if that had to be done all over again, now you as an adult and now in this journey of fatherhood and so forth, would you have maybe wished you would have done it a different way? Or you're glad she did it this way because it just eased the transition? Because it sounds like your mom really set up the container that trust, I'm a safe space. You just need to trust me. Don't question it. So she set that, foundation.
You know what? I think that's the only way it would have worked. Is because I did feel safe and I felt comfortable that she was going to always be able to take care of me. or she was going to do whatever was in the best interest of myself and her. And so um I was like, okay, I don't think if she was like unsure about what was happening, or if she was like, kind of waffling on what was going on, even if she felt that way, I don't think it would have made it as smooth. That's for sure. If she had any like maybe hemming and hawing about how, we're going to present this family structure to me, it would have made me have more questions. And so because she was really direct and like, this is how it's going to be. Okay, cool. I can live with that. Even to this day, as an adult, I'm like, if you can give me the direction, like I'm not a great cook, but if you give me the recipe, I can make it taste like it's supposed to taste. Like you give me the you give me the directions, and so I think she knew that about me, and so it worked out.
So what were the skill set? What did she put in play that just made you trust? Because at that age, you've got kids now resisting, they're pushing back, they're upset. So what was that magic sauce? What's that secret sauce that your mom gave you, that comfort, security,
Mm.
safety, emotional, physically, psychologically? What was it that she did that you trusted the process?
So my mom, she loves with a big heart, and she disciplines with a firm hand. And so I felt an immense amount of love. Like she was there for everything when I was young, for sure. Like she was always the class mom. If we had anything at school, she was there. If I was like when I was doing karate, she was there. When I did soccer, she was always super involved. Even when we didn't have the means, if I wanted something, she found ways to go get it. She always took care of me. And so there was never a point where I felt like, even like I said, even when we were struggling, it was never a point where I felt like if I asked her for something, she wouldn't be able to make it happen. So much so that if I felt like something I wanted was going to cause problems, I wouldn't ask for it because I knew she was going to try to make it happen. You know what I mean? So I always felt like she was my rock. She was going to look out for me and take care of me, and she did it. And she wasn't just like I had the feeling, like she was literally always there, and always giving of herself. And so I think that was it. That's the mixtures, right? She loved with her whole heart, and she was firm in her boundaries. And I learned to love the boundaries because they kept me safe.
Wow. Hats off to your mom. And for you women out there listening that are struggling because your children's father isn't in their lives, you just got that magic recipe right here. And that's love, unconditional love,
Hmm.
but lead with a firm hand, discipline with
Yeah.
a firm hand. Right there. That's going to minimize the chaos of transition as single moms are trying to figure out, not only providing for their kids, but then also trying to find happiness, peace, love. And that's beautiful right there. That right there is powerful. Such a simple concept, but yet she loved unconditionally, is what you're saying. And she
Hmm.
led with a big heart, but she was firm when it came
Yeah.
to discipline. And that's the
Yep.
balance that most parents don't have. So
Yeah.
that's power.
Yeah, it
You know,
was it
so
was it is. And I try to emulate that as much as I can. And I think that's what a lot of parents do, is we kind of take some of the good things that our parents did, and we try to continue with those things, and then the bad things we're like, I don't really like that, so I'm not going to do it." Um I just think we sometimes we don't find the balance in it. Sometimes we lean too far in one direction or the other.
so now you're coming out of the early years and transitioning into junior high school.
Mm.
Where's your real dad? And I don't want to say real dad. Where's your biological dad
Mhm.
now, as he's going through his rehabilitation, and then now you have your other dad by marriage now. How's that look for Rod as a teenager now growing up?
So by the time I get to middle school, my dad is clean. He is back on his feet, working. Him and his his brother have an apartment. So I'm getting now to go visit him. It's court appointed though, right? So it's like every other weekend and, maybe a month in the summer or a couple weeks in the summer. So it's not like a whole lot, but he's got his act together at this point. And he's showing up, right? When there's stuff that's going on, if he's not at work, he's there, right? So I'm feeling supported by him. I'm feeling loved by him. He's also, my mom is now like, okay, he got it together. You can discipline too. So he was also there to discipline if it was necessary. I didn't get in a whole lot of trouble. And when I say like, it wasn't like I was, getting in a bunch of trouble, but it was just like I knew that I had two parents that were going to make sure that I was doing what I was supposed to do. So that was enough. I could probably sneak and get away with some stuff with my mom, but I knew my dad was also going to be there to back her up, which I think is really important for people who split up, is that you have to figure out a way to co-parent really well, because even though you aren't together, you created that child together. So you have to parent them together despite all your personal differences. And I think my mom and dad had some venom. Like my mom used to talk poorly about my dad. My dad, I don't really remember him ever talking bad on my mom. But I remember her saying some stuff out of anger. Just things would happen and she'd be frustrated, or sometimes I do something like you just like your dad, that kind of stuff, you know. But when it came to me and things that I needed or things that they were going to do for or with me, they were always a team, which I think made me feel really, really comfortable. So in middle school, he's back into my life. My stepfather is also there. But both of my fathers are workaholics or were workaholics, right? So my dad, once he got back on, he's working two jobs. My stepdad was driving the bus for the city, but he's working his normal shift and overtime. So pretty much my whole life of being with him from 7 to 17 or whatever age that was when I left for school, um, he worked overtime, right? So he's working 60 hours a week my whole life. So, I didn't get to see him a whole lot. So as far as like, when you get to middle school and you're kind of starting to get into puberty and maturing and kind of becoming a man, I got like very few conversations with a man, because he just wasn't able to be there, right? He was working, um, or he was resting. And then I got the weekend, my dad would come and get to hang out with my dad. Those are my times to like, work on my manhood. But other than that, I was kind of like with my mom all the time.
Did your did your dads teach you about how to change a tire and how to shave? Did he have the sex talk with you about the birds and the bees? Did you have that, or was that just not there wasn't time for that?
No, what's funny is no one like I would say now if I had sons, it would be like, and I do with my daughters actually. But I'm saying if I had a son, just for a hypothetical, I would plan a day where we're gonna go out and we're gonna mess with the car. I'm gonna take you how to show you how to change the tire. We're gonna take it off, we're gonna put it back on, then I'm gonna let you do it. We're gonna change the oil. We're gonna go through it together. Just some stuff like that, right? I never really got that from either one of them. I was around when they were doing stuff like that, but it wasn't like, "Hey, come here, let me show you." It was just like I saw them doing it, and so I kind of paid attention because I was curious. So I kind of picked up on that stuff that way. Because I'm kind of curious by nature. So stuff like that always like, "Oh, we're changing the tire today? Okay, let me get in as close as I can without getting hurt." As far as the sex talk, is really weird because neither one of them had a real sex talk with me, like birds and bees type thing. I remember one time I was at my dad's for the weekend. This was in middle school, 7th or 8th grade, and we were going camping. And is my stepmom and my sisters and me and my dad, and for whatever reason they decided to split cars. We were going to take two separate cars going to the same place. But I realized once we started driving, it was so we could have this talk. And I want to say of the 3-hour drive, the talk lasted like 5 minutes. It was like, as you get older, you're going to start liking girls and they're going to start liking you. You're probably going to kiss some girls and then things are going to go a little bit further. Like it was a really like surface level conversation. It was just like, and then you're going to want to do this, you're going to do that, and this is how you do that. And then we start talking about something else. And that was like literally the conversation. So no, I never really got that talk. I learned it in school from other people, unfortunately. Like, your friends tell you stuff. So I learned maybe the hard way, because I didn't have somebody tell me right away.
Wow. And so, well, let me ask you a question. How's your relationship with your dads?
My biological dad, I mean, it's amazing. Since he came back into my life, he's never left my life. He's always been there and been present and available. After I finished high school, I got to live with him for a year, before I went off to school. My stepdad, around that same time when I went to live with my biological dad, my stepdad and my mom, they got divorced, and I actually haven't talked to him since. Well, I think I might have talked to him one time since then. And so that's like I was 17. So this is almost, 15 years ago. I still talk to my sisters, his daughters, but I haven't talked to him. And I keep saying I'm going to reach out to him. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I guess I got to, I'm going to ask them for his number or something. But I haven't talked to him, and probably because, and my reasoning behind it is when we were together, I never really talked to him. You know what I mean? We never really had real meaningful conversations. So I'm okay. It's not like I'm missing something or I lost something, or that conversation. Like I remember things that we, happened or things we did together and all that kind of stuff. But like, as far as conversations, we didn't used to do that really anyway. So it's like, oh, I'm going to call you. And then what are we going to talk about? 'Cause like, hey, how you doing? I guess I could tell you a bunch of stuff about me. You could tell me a bunch of stuff about you, but then I'll probably never call you again because now I know everything. You know what I mean? Like, we're not just going to catch up on a Monday and I tell you what happened last week. And then you tell me what happened last week for you. And then I'll call you next Monday. That's probably not going to be our relationship. So it kind of, once they split up, it just kind of went away.
Do you think, I heard you say that, he really wasn't present because he was working his job and then he worked
Mhm,
overtime and there's, I
mhm.
think it's just unfortunately because of the economic situation, he just couldn't show up for you. So maybe in his mind, the way that he showed up was financially by, helping to pay the bills, by helping,
Oh yeah, 100%. I don't fault him for it because I understood it because my mom they actually both drove the bus for the city, and she was in an accident. Some kids were some younger, not kids, they were teenagers or whatever, playing chicken with the bus. So going head on, and so she swerved before they, had the collision, and she ended up hitting the center divider, and was put on disability. She's never worked since then. So obviously you go from two incomes to one income, you got to make up the difference. And so I knew why he was working as much as he did. I knew he was doing it for us. And I totally appreciated it. Um, would I have traded some of those extra dollars for some more time and interaction? Oh, 100%. But I was understanding of what it meant, what he had to do. And I think that's one of the things that I learned from him. One is work ethic. I'm willing to go do whatever I need to do for my family. If something like that happens and I got two jobs, I got to work overtime, I'm gonna do whatever is necessary to take care of my family, and I'm gonna do it without complaint. I'm not telling everybody, "Oh man, this is what I got." Like I never seen him complain about any of it. He just did what he had to do. The check hit the bank. We got to eat, and we was living, and he was working. Um, so I appreciate it. I think for sure he felt that way. Like the way he was showing up was to do that stuff. He made it to a few games here and there, but typically because of his schedule and the way he worked, he couldn't. And I was okay with it. I was accepting of that. But like I said, if he would have showed up to some, it would have been great.
I'm going to put a challenge out to you. I'm going to put a
Okay.
challenge out to you to reach out to him and maybe just record that conversation for your own self. But I, I just think there's unleft business on the table.
Probably. It's funny, man. I was actually talking to my sister, his oldest daughter, about just, how's he doing? How's everything going? And she kind of gave me a little scoop or whatever, but not nothing too in depth, right? And then like a week later, I looked him up because internet, you can find anybody nowadays. Uh, and like I found it. I don't, you get a little older, you don't understand cybersecurity like that. I found his address and like phone numbers and email, like everything was just on the internet, like nothing was covered. And I was like, all right, you know what? I'm gonna call him, or at least at the very least, I'm gonna email him. And I just never did. And I don't know if it was like I didn't have the courage to, and that might have been it, because it was like I feel bad because I haven't talked to him, and he sacrificed all that for us. And then I just like as a young kid was just like, oh, I'm gonna go live my life or whatever, and whatever happens with you happens with you. And now 15 years later, I'm gonna come back and be like, hey man, thank you for everything. I'm sorry. And so like I know there's a little bit of a courage thing that's in there. And then just I just was quote unquote busy with life. So yeah, you're right. I do need to call them and have that conversation, especially being in the situation I am, working with fathers and in fatherhood. It's I do sometimes feel like it's hypocritical for me not to do it. Um, so it'll happen. It'll happen. I'll take the challenge. I'll reach out to him.
Because what you're saying here is you're doing the same thing that he did to you.
Come to okay, all
Yeah,
right.
sit with that. Sit with that. Sit with that because you just said a busy life. You know. So
Yeah, yeah,
like we keep
yeah,
score. We it's a ego and pride that steps in. And
yeah.
but just to have that conversation and just like you said, to thank him for all he did, I think that man, that would be so powerful. Not even for him, whether or not I don't know whether he's emotional or has an open heart, but I know what that would do for him because, as a father and having adult children now, um, but also there's some medicine there for you. There's some powerful medicine for you that, yeah, I know I just felt called to issue that challenge. So, yeah, fucking Edward, get me off this podcast.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I didn't sign up for this. No, I appreciate it though, honestly, because it takes someone sometimes outside of yourself to force you to do what you need to do for yourself. And so I appreciate that. I got his number somewhere, or I could just look it up again. Like I said, he
No,
wasn't trying to hide. He wasn't
I'll
trying to
share a
hide
story
it.
with you. I didn't talk to my oldest daughter for 5, 6 years because of a decision she made that went against my values, my beliefs. So I threw her out the house and she was dead to me. And we just reconnected in the last couple of years. So she's 28 years old now. And the one thing she always brings up when we have these deep conversations is, I wish you wouldn't have given up.
Mm,
Even though I wasn't going to receive it, even though I was dead to you, you were dead to me, there was this anger. I still wanted you to reach out. Even if I didn't take the call, just knowing that you reached out, knowing that you sent a text, it would have been medicine for me. So
yeah.
that's always stayed with me. When topics like this come up, I definitely need to pass on that little bit of medicine.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna take it and get a teaspoon of sugar and go ahead and let the medicine go down. Right.
Absolutely. So now you step into fatherhood. How did that look like? So how old are you? And was it unexpectedly? Was it planned? What did fatherhood look like for you at the inception of it?
So, ooh. So at the time, it's 2011. I'm on the career trajectory that I think I want to be on. Okay, so I go to college, play football. I went into college with the idea that I was going to be a veterinarian. About 3 years in, I realized that being a veterinarian and playing football were going to be difficult because of the way our schedule worked out. So I ended up switching to business, marketing to be specific. So when I graduate, I worked for a year in a marketing firm and absolutely hate it. Um, so I have the conversation with my wife, who was then my girlfriend at the time. We had been together since high school, but she's my girlfriend at the time, and I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I need to find something that I'm passionate about, that I actually want to do. So I got into personal training, which led into strength and conditioning. So training athletes and working in high schools or whatever. And I get the opportunity to work with the New York Mets. So I become a strength and conditioning coach to the New York Mets. This is 2010. Um, First season is great. Second season, we get back. Um, and I'm in California. Most of the year when you're working with a baseball team, you're traveling, and when you're not traveling, you're like spring training is in Florida. So, half the year I'm on the other side of the country, the other half the year I'm here. By this time we're married. But the second time, second year, come back for All-Star break. We haven't seen each other in a few months. We do what we're supposed to do. And we go back and, finish out the season and, or finish out the short season, and I get to go home now. So it's right around Thanksgiving. And we go up north to visit my dad, and she's not feeling well. And I mean, we've been together long enough that being sick is like not abnormal. People get sick, right? But she's like, no, I think this is different. I'm like, well, what do you mean this is different? She's like, well, I think I might need to get a pregnancy test. I'm like, okay. We've been together at that point for like 10 years. So pregnancy test has happened before at this point. It's like, oh, whatever, pee on a stick, everything will be fine. Done this before. So she goes into the bathroom and she's taking a little longer than normal. And I'm, young and foolish. I'm like, what? I saw you. Hey, did you pee on your hands? Like that kind of stuff. I'm just messing around. And she doesn't say anything back. And she opens the door and she comes out and she looks different. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but she just looks different. And I'm like, what happened? And she's like, you're going to be a father. And as those words, and I say this is like my Matrix moment, right? Like those words came at me slow, like the bullets go at Neo, right? Like it's like time kind of stood still and I could see the words coming out of her mouth and my ears receiving them. And immediately in that moment, this is where I say I met my purpose. Like I realized my purpose in that moment. Because up to that point, I was a young I was a major league team strength and conditioning coach. I was doing all the things at 27 or 28. Like I thought I was the big dog, right? I thought I was on path to do all the stuff that I wanted to do. I was fast tracked in the organization. So in a couple of years, I was going to be the big league strength guy. I was going to be making, multiple six figures. I was so excited. But then in that moment, none of that mattered. Like none of that. I didn't care about any of it. And I immediately knew that I was going to leave the team. Like there was no part of me that was going to miss out on even the pregnancy. Like I wanted to be there for the doctor visits. I wanted to have the weird cravings. I wanted to put on the sympathy. I wanted to do it all. Right. So I was like, oh, that's it. I'm leaving the team. In my mind, I didn't say it in that moment. That's not the first thing you say, but super excited. We finished out the weekend. We didn't tell anybody. We just kind of, because you don't want to tell anybody right away because you're not sure what's going to happen. So we spent Thanksgiving with my family like nothing was going on. We get back home, and I was like, I think I'm going to leave the team. And she was like, being smart. It's like, you just found out you're going to have a baby. You can't quit your job. And I was like, yes, I can. And I'll find another one. Like whatever it is, I'm going to figure it out and make it happen. And after a few weeks of going back and forth on it, I called my coordinator and told him that I wasn't coming back, that I was going to be a father and I was going to commit myself to that. And that was it. I was done with baseball.
So I got to ask, why? Where did that deep commitment level come from? That I'm going to give this whole dream, this, dream life that's unraveling, this opportunity that not many people get. And now you're going to become a father, which happens thousands and thousands of times a day. But your commitment level is, I want to experience it all. Where did that come from, Rod?
I don't know. People ask me that all the time because it is like an uncommon story, right? And I really can't put my finger on it. You know, I just, like I said, in that moment immediately, you know how you have like an aha moment or like an epiphany? I felt like I was chasing a career. I was doing like all the right things. I wasn't like the happiest in it, but I was happy, you know? Um, I actually that year I was strength coach of the year. Like I was doing it. I was killing it. I don't know. Strength coach of the year is people vote for you and say you're good.
Yeah.
Killing it is relative. But but it just didn't matter. Like it didn't. I didn't care about it like that. You know, when I father immediately was the most important title to me. And I don't. It's probably obviously right. It's probably got something to do with my childhood, or you know, my dad being there or not being there, or my stepdad being physically present, but not present in any other way. You know, my dad being present in all the other ways, but not able to be there physically. Like it was probably some of that, right? It's like I'm gonna be the complete package of fatherhood. I'm gonna be present in every way that I can, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Like I'm gonna be there. That probably is it, but I can't say for sure. So I'm gonna say probably. But that's what I would say pushed me in that direction right away.
So it sounds like in what you're saying is that your stepfather gave you one of the greatest gifts, and that's by not being present, by always being busy and working, it gave you this realization that I didn't want to repeat that cycle.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, my dad as well, he is the same way. Like I said, he worked 2 jobs my whole life. Actually, he retired earlier this year. Well, the end of 2023, he was retired for like 2.5 months. He's like, "Nah, I'm going back to work." And he's working again. Like it's just what he does, right? And so even when I went to like I would go visit him, he might pick up a shift on a Saturday. Or if I was there over the summer, he'd be working 2 jobs and I might be able to go to work with him one day, but he wasn't like, "I'm not gonna work." Um, and so it was probably a combination of both of them in that regard. Is like I feel like I wanted to be there because, you know, they weren't necessarily.
So now when I think about what you posted and you say, the gift of fatherhood is one of the best jobs of your life, like it hits differently now, knowing your story, because
Mhm.
I can sit there and post it because I'm just having this revelation. Um, and now that I know better, I wish I could go back, but what's done is done. But just
Right.
hearing your story and then you were willing to give it up all because you didn't want to miss that opportunity, the experience, the cravings, all that stuff. You wanted to fully engulf it. Like you went all in. You went all
Yeah.
in. Like
Yeah.
burn the burn the boats. We're gonna do this. We're gonna make it work, and either we're gonna succeed or we're gonna fail. But there is no other option.
Yep. That was it. I mean, it was we had just bought a new house too. Like there was all these reasons why I shouldn't have, right? Like we had just bought a new house. You know, like I said, I had the career that I thought I wanted. There's all these reasons why I should have been like, you know, I need to just keep working, right? There was my examples where that I should have just kept working. People that I told, you know, of course, people are like, you're leaving, you quitting your job, like what? Like my parents for sure were like, when they found when we did tell them, and I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna go back to the Mets. My dad thought I was crazy, like he's like, you can't be serious. Like you got to think about this. Like this is not the right idea. You're making a bad decision. Like all that kind of stuff. My mom was the same way. So I had all the reasons and all the support to not do it. But I did it anyway.
Wow. So how old are you girls?
I have a 12-year-old and a soon to be 10-year-old. She'll be 10 in October.
Okay. So what inspired you to create a platform um, for fathers? Where did that come from?
So as I say, fatherhood is my purpose, right? But I'm a backslider. So I just told that story about how I gave up everything to be a father. Um, the second part of that is, so I gave up everything to be a father. I found an opportunity close to home working at an athletic performance facility that's like relatively close to my house, like 10, 15 miles from my house. So I take a job there as just a training, like a coach, just a regular guy. But obviously, I'm not your normal regular guy. Like I'm not your normal entry level guy. But I took that position because I needed a job. I needed to pay bills. But I escalated pretty quickly in the company, and got to a point where before I left, it was like the CEO of the company and then me. So I was there for like 12 years or 11 years. And the reason I created the platform or Forfeit Fatherhood is because actually it happened during the pandemic. So up until that point, I was, I found I was gonna be a father, threw everything away, just fatherhood. But then I start building this company or helping them build this company where we started off with one small building to by the time I left, we had 5 buildings and had trained something like 50,000 athletes in Southern California. Like it was a big deal. But what I realized is, and thanks to the pandemic, honestly, is when we had to shut down gyms here in California and I wasn't able to go to work, for the first time in almost a decade, I was eating dinner at home during the week with my family, right? Like to so much so that my youngest daughter, one of the days, and it was like a Tuesday or a Thursday, it was like some random day, she asked me why I was eating dinner with them. Like, why? Not even that. She asked me why I was here. I was like, well, Daddy, why are you here? Because it was foreign to them for me to be there during the week. And as you can imagine, that that hit me pretty hard, and I decided again in that moment, like that those words were very much like the "you're gonna be a father" words, right? It kind of stopped me in my tracks. And I realized that while I was pursuing a purpose, I was doing great work. Like I was helping young people become, the athlete that they want to be. I was helping them pursue their dreams. I realized I was not doing the same for my family, right? Like I was showing up for all these other people. And while I was still very intentional about my time, I just wasn't giving them that much because I didn't have it to give. And so being home, I realized like they had all these little inside jokes and little things that they were doing and saying that I was like, what is like I live here. Like, where is all this coming from? And so after about a month of that, I was like, yo, I called the CEO of the company and I told him, hey, I can't do this anymore. I've got to be home for my family. And I'm not gonna just walk away. I'm not gonna put in a 2 week notice. I gave him 4 months. I was like, I'll stick around, hire, train people. I'll do whatever you need me to do to make sure that it's a soft landing. But I've got to go take care of my family. And so once I decided that, that's when I started the Instagram page actually. And then from there, it kind of turned into the podcast, turned into like all these other things that started happening. But that was the origin story of Forfeit Fatherhood.
Wow. And so it sounds like one of the challenges was not being present at home because you're out giving your time and energy to other kids,
Mhm.
trying to achieve their dreams. What were some of the other obstacles or challenges that you faced as you were transitioning into fatherhood with your children? So not being there, of course, one of the biggest ones. And
Right. Well, so it's funny actually, and this is kind of how what kind of led into me doing the podcast is when I made this commitment, I'm going to be a father, right? Is it's like, okay, I'm going to be a father. I'm going to start reading the baby books, right? But okay, after you go through a few baby books, they kind of all are the same. So now what happens once the baby gets here? There wasn't at that time a whole lot of information that I found, right? This is 2012 when my daughter was born, August of 2012. Not a whole lot out there. There probably was, but I wasn't finding it. So I was like, okay, what's the next best thing? I should start talking to guys who I think are pretty good fathers and ask them, what's your experience? What's going on for you? Like, what happened? And those conversations is what kind of years later kind of drew me into doing a podcast, is because I remember having those conversations and learning so much from these guys that they probably wouldn't tell you otherwise. Like, if you think about it, if you've ever been in a room with several guys, no one's talking about like what they had to do with their kids today. Like they're talking about sports, they're talking about cars, they're talking about women, they're talking about politics. Like we talk about everything but fatherhood if you give us time, right? Until you get in a room that's about fatherhood, and then everybody has all these things to share. So when I decided I'm gonna go, all in on fatherhood again the second time, I was like, I'm gonna go back and start recording some of those conversations. I'm gonna start having those conversations again because I know that when I was a young father, I didn't have it. And even though my dad is a great father, he's an old school dude. Like when I was young, he was working, and it was different, right? Like by the time I had kids, I was almost 30, so that means it was like 30 years ago when he had a kid, like a young kid. Like his advice is very different than what I wanted to do with my kids, right? And so I struggled a little bit with like navigating that part, and that's why I started having conversations because I just didn't know. And I don't think it really happens at all. It didn't happen for me, but like nowhere along the process. Like I said, I didn't get the birds and bees conversation. I definitely didn't get the, hey, when you become a father, this is what's going to happen for you conversation, And I don't know that anybody really does. I think a lot of dads just tell you, hey, uh, get some sleep. They give you like the very surfacey stuff, and so I struggle with it because I wanted to be more and do more. So I had to go out and get information from books and videos and other people eventually. So that was probably my biggest struggle. And then too, up until that point, I had been kind of living my life, doing whatever me and my wife wanted to do. We would travel and go do whatever, right? And I had to realize that like once my daughter got here, like all of that is it's not over, but it's not the same level anymore. Like there's a different level of responsibility that's here now. And it took a little bit of adjusting.
It's funny because one of the things I like to say is the world that we grew up in no longer exists. And especially when our parents want to uh, flex their parenting skills on us for their grandkids and so forth. And, then I think of the Kendrick Lamar song, not like us, they're not like
Yeah.
us. Just, it's a different world, different dynamic with technology and social media and just AI now, so things are so different in how we're teaching our kids and how we're even disciplining them and
Hmm.
soft style, hard style, old school style, there's all these different things. So it's a constant reminder that we can't continue to raise our kids the way that we were raised because
Right.
that world no longer exists. You know,
Right.
um, what are some of the lessons that you've learned from your girls that have kind of impacted your leadership style as you're now stepping into this platform of um, leading fathers to become a better version of themselves and then to really step into that role of truly being a father?
Yeah. You know what? I posted something about this the other day about the power of have not only just having kids, but I have daughters. And this even goes further back to like where I said I was the only boy, I was only son, right? So I was allowed to just be a son, like, you know what I mean? I was the only one in the house, so it was like boy stuff. Everything was boy stuff, right? Which also means though, when you're raised in the 80s and 90s, is like boys don't cry. Um, Everything is like toughen up, like you got to be tough and you got to guard yourself from emotions and feeling. You don't feel stuff. And my wife will even say, when we first got together, I didn't have any emotions. Like I was emotionless, is what she used to tell me actually. And it's because I never got too high, I never got too low. I just kind of always was in the middle with whatever, right? Like if it wasn't bad, then cool. If it was great, hold on, because it might be bad soon. But what having daughters or having kids, but daughters specifically, is forced me to do is become more emotionally intelligent. I have to be more socially aware. I have to embrace myself, the entire wheel of emotions. Because for me, up until that point, it was three. I was happy, I was sad, or I was angry. Right. And if I was sad, it probably made me angry because I didn't want to be sad. Right. So I really only had two. And when you only have two emotions, one of them is toxic, or too much of any one thing is going to be toxic. And so I've had to expand in that way. I've had to learn a, a greater deal of empathy. Um, I have to be more socially aware. I have to be more aware of other people's feelings, and trying to understand how they are responding and why they're responding that way. Because for me, like, something happens, you can't cry about that. Like, that's not that serious. Like, get over it, or rub some dirt in it, walk it off, those kind of things, right? Toughen up, that kind of response. It's how I was raised, kind of, right? Because I was a boy, because that's how men are socialized. And so I've had to break free from that in order to be a father to these little girls. Because I guess I could father them that way. I could, be tough on them, but then I'd be handicapping them, and they'd be growing up with the same situation where they don't have a full wheel of emotions and they end up, you know, uh, just angry or happy. So that's one of the things that I've learned from, and I think God gives you what you need, right? Like I don't know that my wife and I's relationship is as happy as I think we were at the time. With me just having angry or happy as emotions was going to go too far, right? She'll say now that having kids made me a better husband because I feel like that level of responsibility, the level of sacrifice, the level of empathy, like I mentioned before, allows me to be better with her as well. So having kids has taught me everything, like it taught me to be a complete man as opposed to just one type of man. Like I get to be a three-dimensional man, or like Jason Wilson calls it a comprehensive man, right? Where a man is everything he needs to be whenever he needs to be it. I think if I had sons, it probably wouldn't have been that way. I think if I never had kids, it definitely wouldn't have been that way. So they have forced me to become the full 360.
So now I'm going to take a peek into your home and I'm going to ask you this question. Are you a girl dad?
I am.
You let them
I
paint your
am.
nails, you play
No.
Barbies. No. Okay. Whoa.
Okay.
Whoa.
So so everything I play. Tea parties, dolls, uh dress up. I'm not putting on dresses, but we dress up and we do all of it, right? Like if it's a holiday, we fully dress out for it. We go to the movie, like we do all the stuff. The nail painting is where I drew the line, right? Because I just was like, they still, though, to this day, actually, so every year, a couple times a year, we do father daughter dates really regularly, individually. Like I'll take one daughter out and we'll go do something all day, take the other daughter out. So a couple times a year we do that. We try to do it every 6 months. Every time, every time it's we should go get our nails painted. When no, we can go though. Like I'll get a manicure and we'll get a pedicure, the whole thing. But I'm not letting them put paint on me, and clear or otherwise. And that's just my boundary. Like I don't have anything like my some of my best friends have gone and done it or do it with their kids. I'm not passing judgment on anybody. Like I don't care either way. It's just not for me. But yes, I'm a girl dad, 100%. Yeah, I guess it.
um, Tell me about a moment where, in your fatherhood journey, uh, you felt vulnerable and, how you were able to overcome that.
Oh man. I feel vulnerable every day, to be honest, because I approach my fatherhood with I don't really know how to explain it, man. Like I'm still laying everything on the line for fatherhood, right? Like I am every day giving of myself everything that I can to be the best father for them. And I know that anytime you put something out there like that, or there's always risk, right? Like I might get my feelings hurt or something like that, right? So being vulnerable in that way every day. But I try to, with my daughters and with my wife, is I don't hide from them who I am and how I feel. I try to be as open and as honest about that as I can. And I think that vulnerability on that level is a strength because when you're a leader and the people you are leading see that you aren't impossibly invincible, like they want you to protect them, right? Like there's a reason why we know that kryptonite is Superman's weakness, right? Because he can do everything else. Was it Gotham? No, his Superman's not Gotham. That's Batman. Metropolis. He could save Metropolis. He could scale buildings. He's faster than a locomotive. He could do all that stuff. But if they never told us that he had a weakness, it would be disingenuous. We wouldn't believe it, right? But because we know that he has some weakness, we're endeared to him because we have weaknesses, right? And so like I can follow Superman and I can try to do because he's kind of like me. And so for my family, I want to be, and this is my like my safe space, right? Like outside of here, I have to be whoever I need to be, right? But in here, I can be myself. And so that's why I say every day I'm vulnerable. Like every day I'm open. If I need to cry about something, this doesn't happen often, but if I need to cry about something, I'm not afraid to do it here or in front of them,
Yes.
any of the three. Uh, if I'm frustrated, if I'm any of the emotions, I'm able to be that completely around them because I let my guard down.
As you're speaking, what keeps showing up for me is that's the beliefs and the values that your mother instilled in you as a child.
Hmm.
Because everything you said was just a replicate of what she showed you about the transparency, about the honesty, and that's your mom inside of you. And that's
Yeah.
you, not sure if you ever thought about that, but it just made that correlation right now.
No, I haven't. I haven't, but I can definitely see that. I can definitely see it.
So I just asked two more questions because I know we're coming to a close. Um,
Okay.
how did fitness come into all this? So I know your journey would be fitness, you're a strength coach and so forth, but what did you make the correlation that being fit makes you a better father?
Oh, okay. Okay. So I think one, just on a very, very base level, I love being a father. Um, in order for me to be a father at a high level, in order for me to be a father for as long as possible, I have to take care of my body, right? I have to be physically fit. Now, I don't have to be a bodybuilder. I don't have to be an Olympic level athlete, but I do have to have a certain level of fitness to live longer, right? If I'm not taking care of my body, my opportunities to be with my children shorten, right? That window of opportunity gets smaller. So that's just at the base level. The other part is when you're in better shape, life is a little easier, right? Like when I come home or when my kids come home, we can go play for hours because I got the energy to do it, right? When they go to school and they tell their friends my dad is stronger than your dad, I don't want them to be lying. Like like there's this little things that I started to kind of make connections with, and with what I do as a coach and with what I do as a father, there's a lot of crossovers, right? Like I'm leading, guiding, teaching at work. I'm leading, guiding, teaching with my children. So there's a lot of that goes together. And so I think a couple of, like I said, on that base level, and then just for men individually, if you weren't a father or husband or a brother or whatever, you're you and you are important to you. So why not take care of yourself? Right? Like if you feel, and I know not everybody feels the way, everybody's got their own stuff, but like if you love yourself, you have to take care of yourself. So at the very base of it, that the man that's at the center of it all has to be taken care of. That means he's got to be, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually fit so they can do that.
Wow. So, what legacy do you hope to leave for your girls?
Uh, you know what? I always say like my legacy is not going to be um like I'm not I'm gonna leave behind some money. I'm gonna leave behind some like, physical things that they can touch, and they're tangible things, right? But what I want to leave for them is what I'm going to leave in them, right? Which is how I have parented them, how I've loved them, how I've cared for them, how I've been set boundaries for them, how I've disciplined them. Like all of those things I'm trying to instill in them because I know that they'll carry that on to the next generation and the next generation. And so I've always said I want to be like the old grandpa, like at at Christmas. Like I got the chair in the corner and all the little kids are sitting around me and I'm telling stories about how I used to walk uphill 5 miles in the snow. I want that, but more importantly is years from now, decades from now, when they say, great grandpa Rod or great great grandpa Rod, he was X, Y, and Z. I want them to all be good things. I've heard people talk about Grandpa X, and he was a mean old. I don't want that to be the thing. And so it's not about any monetary or financial things. We still get that. It's about the kind of person they show up as in the world. I want to be a shining example of what that is, because I think that holds way more weight than a house and some life insurance money.
Wow. So what are your closing thoughts, Rod? What are your closing thoughts on fatherhood? What do you want to leave as a closing message as we start to bring what's been a powerful and beautiful episode, to closure?
We'll bring it around full circle. Let's go back to where we started, where fatherhood is the most important title that you'll ever receive. You are going to do amazing things in your life. You're going to create things and build things, and you're gonna your career trajectory is you're gonna go through the roof. You're gonna be a manager and CEO. You're gonna run businesses, and you're gonna do a whole bunch of stuff. But the one thing that you can do that's gonna echo throughout eternity is be a father, because no matter how well you do it, you're always going to be somebody's father. No
Mm,
matter when you pass away, they're always going to refer to you as someone's father. You're going to
wow.
be like my mom's dad or my grandma's father. Like you're always going to be a father, no matter what. So you have to take that role with that weight. It's like you are going to be a father forever, whether you're alive or not. You're always somebody's dad. And so that's why I say it's the most important role, is because we have to live our life not with the burden of that, but with the value of that word and that title.
Wow. Beautifully said. So if people want to find you, they want to find your podcast, uh, where do they find you? Where do they find your podcast?
So the podcast, I try to keep everything simple, right? So if you go to www.forfeitfatherhood.com, the number four, you'll find, I say 90% of the stuff I'm doing. So if it's podcast, if it's merch, if it's blogs, if it's any of that stuff, it's all there. Where you find me most active, and where you can probably get in touch with me easiest is on Instagram, at Forfeit Fatherhood, the number four again. I'm on the other stuff too. I'm on X, Twitter. I still like to call it Twitter. X just sounds weird. I'm on TikTok, but I'm not as active on those, right? On Instagram, I'm on there daily, right? And so if you want to message me, you're probably going to catch me there. I still reply back. I'm going to say this because somebody got mad at me because I said I reply and it was like an autoresponder. It's because I get a lot of messages. I have an autoresponder just so it's not like I left you on scene or on red or whatever. Like I do get back to it and I check my messages every day. So if you have something you want to reach out, at Forfeit Fatherhood on Instagram, or just go to www.forfeitfatherhood.com. And I'm looking forward to hearing from you.
Wow. Well, you know what? Thank you for your time. And we're going to call this a wrap for this episode of Fatherhood Voices. And I just will call to say that, Rod, man, I give you props, man. I give you props. And, for taking on that role, the true essence of what fatherhood is, and having the strength and the courage and the ability to go out and execute and leave it all to step into your true power. one of the most important jobs this world has ever offered, and that's being a father. So hats off to you, Rod, and
Oh, thank
much
you.
success to you and your journey with Forfeit Fatherhoods. And I look forward to following it. And who knows, maybe in the future I see maybe some collaboration on some exciting projects together. I'm out in California, Southern California, you're up north. So yeah, we definitely got to get together and vibe and continue to um, share that message of the greatest job in the world, and also how we have to stay fit in order to be able to show up for our kids and our kids' kids. So,
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you giving me opportunity to share my voice on Fatherhood Voices. I really appreciate it.